Hi everybody and welcome to the Women in Identity webinar. This webinar we are going to be meeting the founders. You've got myself and Colette and Pam on the call today. We've had apologies for starting a little bit late. We've had a couple of technical difficulties this morning, this afternoon. This morning for people that are in the US and this afternoon for people that are in Europe. So apologies that we're starting a little bit late. It also means that unfortunately Pam and Colette have got the delight of me being the interviewer as well as answering the questions. So I'm going to be asking the questions and also I am going to be answering them as well. So thanks very much to everybody that's joined us. Just to let you know, we did send out our newsletter this week, so hopefully that's hit everybody's inbox. And that's also come with a survey. So we would really love it if everybody could just click on the link on that survey. It will literally take you a couple of minutes to fill it out. And what we really want to do is just understand a bit more about our membership base and the reasons why you've joined Women in Identity, just so that we can deliver more value out to our members. Cool, right. So I am going to kick off with the questions. I don't know if there's another slide. We are flying by the seat of our pants, everybody. Oh, housekeeping. Oh, okay, here we go, housekeeping.
So Emma thinks she's in control, but we could stage a revolt. I just want you all to know that.
Okay, cool. So housekeeping. Everybody is going to be on mute apart from us. And then I think that we may be, there we go, except for the presenters. Next, no videos today. So we're not actually going to be showing any videos. This is just going to be an interview. Next bullet point. Oh yeah, raise a hand to ask a question. So if anybody's got any questions, I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about our Women in Identity sessions is that they've been really interactive. So please feel free to ask questions at any point in time. This isn't, for me and Pam and Colette to be talking at everybody. This is your opportunity as members of Women in Identity and allies of Women in Identity to ask us some questions. There are no stupid questions, so just feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Oh, and please identify yourself before you ask the questions. And all of our webinars are recorded for members who can't attend, and it will be available on our YouTube channel after this session. There we go, and I've talked about the SEER survey. So just a little bit about us. We were formally registered just over a year ago, so we've just had our birthday. I think most of you will know we're a not-for-profit organisation and we're led and organised entirely by volunteers. So Pam, myself, Colette, and everybody else that you see and interact with, all the stuff that you see going on, on social media and everything else with Women in Identity, that is all run by volunteers. All the things that you see happening in the regions is all being run by volunteers. So it's a really amazing effort. I'm always so impressed with the quality of stuff that we put out. And everybody's also working full-time jobs as well, pretty much for the most part of all of our volunteers. So there's a lot of juggling that goes on. We've got 1,300 members now and supporters across the world. So that's been an incredible journey in the last 12 months and huge growth. And we've got 15 ambassadors across the world. And we've got 4,500 followers on social media, and that is growing. So yeah, growing organization. In terms of the vision, just to recap, our vision is digital identity solutions built for everyone, should be built by everyone. And our mission is to inspire, elevate, and support a more diverse workforce in the digital identity industry. And that's irrespective, we often get asked the question, well, you're Women in Identity, does that mean it's just gender? It's absolutely not. And even, gender itself is completely intersectional. If we look at all of the intersectionality of identity, that touches everything. It touches everything from gender to age, to race, to culture, to ability, disabilities. So, we could touch all of the spectrums, and really what we are is an organisation championing all diversity across the industry.
Also, we have a secret submission that we've never told anybody, and that's to have fun while we accomplish our mission.
Oh, that is also true.
And
there was definitely some fun, technical fun happening just before we started today. So this is our leadership team, our board of advisors, and our wider leadership team. So, you know, I mean, across the globe, we've got a really big voluntary team, and all of these people put their time in, completely voluntary to this organisation, to be able to bring you webinars like we've got, the events that we run previously when we could do in-person events, the newsletter, and all of the other work that we're doing across the organisation. Cool, right. So we're into the interview. So like I said, if anyone's got any questions, just feel free to ask questions. So this is great, isn't it? It wasn't supposed to be me interviewing, but now I'm like, I'm like, this is awesome. I get to interview. So question for Pam. How did you get into identity?
I got into identity a long time ago, so very long ago. It's very sad. But I actually was living in Canada. I'm born in Canada. Living in Canada and working for one of the .com darlings of Canada, which lets you know just how long ago we're talking here. And I was installing middleware. And at the time, you know, the middleware I was installing was directories and application servers and mail servers. And so they were all involved people. And so I was lucky enough to go to a conference. The company that hired me sponsored me to go to one of the Burton Group Catalyst conferences at the time. It's now the Gartner Catalyst Conference. And I got there and I realized there was this whole group of people who didn't just care about the software settings. They were actually talking about how to manage people and what best practices were for security for people and all of these things. And I got really excited and I started asking a bunch of questions and, sort of stood up and spoke out. And at the end of that conference, the organizer came to me and said, you should put in a conference talk for next year. And I did, and I got rejected. And then I did the next year and I got rejected. And I did the year after that and I got rejected. And you can kind of see how this goes. But the whole time that was happening, I was learning more about practice of identity management and making friends and having, you know, even more opinions than I started with. And that was really how I got going in identity. It really did stem from that one conference.
But you did get a conference talk accepted.
I did eventually.
Because I have seen you do conference talks.
Yeah, it took 4 years. So if you're getting rejected for conference talks, you're not alone.
Pam is the person to go and talk to. Right. How about you, Colette? How did you get into identity?
It was sort of on accident. I'm not on the technical side of identity. I'm on the kind of commercial and sales side, but I started at, so Denver is where I grew up and I went to school in Boulder and it's a big tech hub. And I didn't actually realize there were other jobs outside of software. That sounds really silly, but like my dad's in software and I was like, well, obviously I'll get a tech job. That makes sense. And so, and being in Boulder and in Denver, it's very technology oriented. So I started at an agile project management software company, doing kind of sales and then some partnership management and things like that. And actually my dad, who's a kind of head of product type role, who is more on the technical side, said, you know, Colette, if you're going to be in a mostly male dominated industry like technology, I worked with this woman named Vicki Lenny, and she's amazing. And she always beats all the boys, which is like kind of something I like to do as well. And he said, let me introduce you to her. So I met with Vicki just to have a chat, and she worked at Ping, where I am now. And she was like, listen, it's a cool technology. It touches everything that everyone does. And like, I actually kind of buy into what I'm selling and putting out there. And so I waited for like 9 months. So immediately kind of Vicki introduced me to Recruiter, and I wanted to be at Ping. After researching the industry and researching the company itself, I was like, this is what I want to do. I waited for 9 months. Every month I would email a recruiter being like, where's my spot kind of thing. And eventually after that time, I got the job, and actually Vicki's turned into an amazing friend and mentor of mine, and we still talk quite frequently, and she's amazing. She knows everyone. And like, you know, so since then been at Ping, and it's been such a eye-opening and learning experience, you know, learning about identity in different areas of business. So I don't know, that's it. It was an accident, kind of. Cool. What about you, Emma? Yeah, it's your turn now.
So I too, I think was an accident. I mean, I've been in the industry for quite a long time. So I joined a company called GB Group, and they were a marketing services company at the time. And the CEO had, you know, some foresight that he thought this was back in 2002, I think. And he had the foresight that he was like, identity fraud's going to be a big thing in the future. So this is when this always makes me laugh, because our first product we built was on a CD-ROM. So it was quite a long time ago, right? And so he kind of got a group of us together. Colette's pulling a face because she's the young one out of us. He got a group of us together and said, look, you know, with some of the data that we've got, I think it would be interesting to go and build something in the identity space that replicates the manual process the banks have to go through to do KYC. And I think we can do that electronically using data. And that was it. And I was part of that team. And then I've never, you know, I just was kind of like, this is kind of cool. And I think my family for years thought I worked for like MI6 or MI5 or something. You know, I'd go to Christmas dinners and they'd be like, what do you do? And I'd explain, and they'd be like, go away thinking I was a spy. You know, and that's kind of lessened over time. I think now they've realized I'm not a spy. So next question. This is a good question. I like this one. So what did you originally think you'd be when you grew up, Colette? Go.
Like thinking way back, I thought I was going to be a vet, but I'm allergic to like every animal on the planet, so it's not going to work out for me. So, but really, I always loved technology. I never really had like I want to be president. No, thank you. I want to be a doctor. No, thank you. Like I wanted to do something with technology. I loved like one, always being on the computer, but two, like I remember the day my parents brought home my first home computer. I was like, you know, very, very young. And I remember it. And I remember being on the computer. I loved going to work with my dad and listening to him talk to like all his colleagues. I thought he spoke another language because all he did was speak in acronyms, which if you're in identity, there are lots of acronyms as well that you learn about. And I just was always like I said, I just didn't think there were other jobs. And then, like, you know, in university, I worked at the Apple Store for 4 years, and so I've always been surrounded by technology in one way or another. So I guess it kind of made sense, but I didn't know there were other jobs. Like I like still don't really know what other jobs are out there, honestly. So that's how it happens.
How about you, Pam? What did you want to be?
Well, I was a drama geek in high school, and I spent my
Now I know this, and I was hoping
from probably 17 to 28 doing improvisational comedy at a place called the Loose Moose Theatre in Calgary, Canada, which was freaking awesome. And so I went to university expecting to kind of do a drama, you know, just do drama. And then I took a computer science course and I got hooked. So yes, so all of that improvisational comedy training has resulted in me being a total dork on stage when I do technical presentations.
It makes you feel comfortable though. You know,
that works, right?
Yeah, it works. You're comfortable speaking in front of like big audiences because like.
Yeah, that I am. And I'm also comfortable in some sense being the fool on stage, right? And it is very useful to understand when you should be the straight man and when you should be the funny man, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also very useful, I think, for presenters to understand how to fail gracefully, right? So there are ways you can fail that endear you to people, and there are ways you can fail that make people never ever want, you know, that make people feel uncomfortable in and of themselves. And so, you know, I just work on the failing gracefully part.
Cool. So, and my answer to that one, this is going to be really, this is a really random. So I used to really love, I mean, I still do really enjoy drawing and art. And when I was a kid, I used to have this is going to surprise everyone because my fashion sense is so bad. And for some reason, I mean, I used to just draw lots of like dresses all the time. And I actually thought I was going to be a fashion designer that's what I wanted to be as a kid.
You could still do it. You could design overalls.
No, look at me. I mean, like, look at my t-shirt. This has got like stains on it and all sorts of stuff. It's bad. Okay, cool.
Wait, someone's asked you, Emma, do you love Monsters, Inc., or is there some significance behind it?
Oh, no, I do like Monsters, Inc. I do really like Monsters, Inc. I love that movie. It's just such a good movie, isn't it? You know, it's like the perfect Zoom background. There's no significance other than I just really like kids' films. Right, cool. So who has inspired you along your journey to this point today, Pam?
Oh, how many people have helped? I mean, I'm really, you know, when I look at us three here, you know, I'm very much reminded of our privilege and of how lucky we are, right? I can't tell you how many people have stood up for me over the years. People who've offered me jobs, knowing I could do it rather than looking at a resume and ticking boxes to say that I could do it. You know, I had two mentors in university, Darcy and John, who I'm sure will never see this, but who, you know, sort of taught me that I could do stuff, you know what I mean? Who just gave me hard tasks. They just threw stuff at me and I had to go figure it out. And it changed how I thought about how to solve problems, right? You know, a lot of my bosses have simply brought me on and put me to work. Just, you know, no coddling, no hand holding, just throwing me at problems. And I think that's really helped. How about you all?
How about you, Colette?
It's a hard question. I think, like, you know, general life, like, I think both my parents are, you know, sons and daughters of immigrant parents, first ones to go to college. Like, the life they built for us, you know, you have such an appreciation for it as you get older. You don't realize during the time that it's so significant, the challenges they had to overcome. But then, like, from there and like my adult life, like, everyone I've worked with on women identity is like, I have so much admiration for. You know, I've already spoken about Vicky. I still have so much admiration for her and what she did and what she's still doing. And then, like, even, you know, my boss here in the UK, like, I adore him. Like, Phil Allen's been like, he took such a risk on me. Granted, I harassed him, like, genuinely harassed him until he brought me over here. But he took such a risk on me in a way that I sort of felt that no one else was willing to do at the time, whether it's based on my experience or lack thereof or whatever. But he was like, you know what, we're going to literally move you across the world and we want you to look after like this market and go. And gave me some, like, accounts that I would never, ever have the opportunity to look after, and which makes you learn more when you challenge yourself. So, I mean, I admire him so much in what he's done and how he continues to take chances on me. So, I mean, it's so, you know, the list goes on.
So for me, I think, I mean, in people who've inspired me, I guess I've always kind of looked at people that have, because it's really easy to kind of look at your own life and go, oh, my life is really hard and this is, you know, life's really difficult. But I think it's trying to get that sense of perspective, you know, and when it doesn't, you don't have to look very far to find people whose lives are a lot harder than ours, you know, and certainly a lot harder than mine. And, you know, I look at those people. I mean, you know, an example of this, I actually went with Jo from the Women in Identity Leadership team, and we went to watch Haben Girma, who she was the first deaf-blind person to do law at Harvard Law School, you know, and, you know, we kind of watched her speak, and I was like, wow, she is, like, I mean, unbelievably inspiring. Yeah. And the reason why she wanted to go and study law was because when she went to college, in the college, they wouldn't give her a menu in Braille. And so she couldn't tell what was on the menu, and she was a vegetarian. And so she was like, I continually then just didn't know what I was going to be eating and things like that. And so she decided that she was going to go and study law so she could go round and basically try and enforce people to have to, you know, the rights of disabled people. And I look at people like that and I go, you know, my life just isn't hard, you know? So, you know, it's those people that I look for, you know, particularly in those moments where I'm like, wow, my life's really hard. But, you know, there's been a huge amount of people that have helped me on the way, you know, people that have taken chances on me, you know, when I haven't had any experience. You know, I didn't go to university straight after school and all of those types of things. So there have been people that have definitely taken chances on me, you know, and given me the opportunity to go and get a university education later in life. So, you know, I think none of us can sit here and say that we've done this journey on our own, you know. It's always people that help us and inspire us along the way.
It's interesting, that difference between helping and inspiring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are the people who reach down and give you a hand up, right? Who are maybe where you want to be and help you to rise. And then there are people who are so loftily high up there that you aspire to be them. I think it's a really interesting question of, you know, I think you have to have both in your life. You have to have those people, you know, to climb all by yourself is really hard, no matter how inspired you are. And yet to know where you could possibly go.
Yeah, you totally need people that, you know, could give you those opportunities, because without them, the people that would take the chance on you will never get the experience, you know.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, next question. So what's been your greatest challenge to date? It can be professional or personal.
I don't want to go first.
Do you want me to go? I can go first.
Yeah,
So I'll talk about a personal thing. And I think, so I left home I left home at 16, and I left home and then I tried to finish school when I was like living away from home in a bed sit and yada, 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 which was not an ideal situation. And then I kind of like drifted for a few years, and then I managed to get kind of into the world of working. But it probably the hardest thing for me, I think, was when I think back to that period, I definitely had a kind of a bit of a, it's going to sound bad, a bit of a kind of victim mentality. I think I was a bit like, oh, you know, all of these terrible things that have happened to me, and, you know, and I'm not going to be able to do anything with my life. And I think it took me probably into my sort of early 20s for me to actually just suddenly go, do you know what, Emma, there is only you, and, you know, you need to take accountability and responsibility for yourself, because if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it for you, and you can't spend your life blaming everything else for what's going to happen in your life. And I kind of, at that point, and it was honestly, it was genuinely like rock bottom, the hardest thing that I actually lesson that I learned. But it has been the thing that's actually really helped me have the proper building blocks, you know, to build the rest of my life on. So that was the hardest thing. Greatest challenge. Anyone else?
Okay, you win. Can we go to the next question?
On the whole, I would say I haven't faced too much adversity. I'm very lucky. I'm very privileged. And I grew up in like a very supportive household. I would say like in my early 20s, I like had a very, very, very close friend pass away unexpectedly while I was working full time, and I was finishing my last semester of grad school. And I'd never again faced any sort of adversity or challenge in that capacity. And I just was like, how like you just want to switch off, and like kind of taught me a bit of perseverance in a way. And then you kind of get on the other side of it. And like, there was like a moment when I first moved to London even, where I was like, wow, like Pat would have been the most excited for me to be here. Like, and I wouldn't have done it had I not like pushed. Honestly, I can the worst like 6 months I can think of in my life where I was like, wow, this is every day is really tough, but continuing to kind of persevere. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like there's always you'll get on the other side of it. It's almost just like faking it until you make it. Emma, should we ask another question?
Yeah, save me from myself.
This is me.
Pam's putting things into the chat. So, okay, right. Let's go for another question. Should we move to identity questions? Who fancies an identity question? Right. Cool.
I do.
Right. Let's have a look. What do you think are going to be the biggest changes in the industry, in the identity industry, in the next 3 to 5 years? Pam, to you.
That's a good one.
Now we're talking. So the changes that I see coming are already started. But I think the ones that we as professionals can really grab onto and hold on to, the number one thing is automation, right? We've been talking about automation for a long, long time, but right now the way that the industry is embracing things like continuous integration, continuous deployment, right? When you apply that to identity, you get these really cool things. We start to get, very, 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 very repeatable processes that can go on, operated headlessly. And, this changes everything when you think about the fact that, today, a lot of us are IT pros, right? We are, IT professionals. When we do our identity work, we tend to, open a web portal and we tend to click a bunch of buttons. So, this whole idea that we could in fact set up a bunch of pipelines that are just going to go do stuff for us. And the only thing we need to look at becomes, we don't have to go in and set up a federation or do this or that. Instead, we have this set of insights that show up on our doorstep every day. Today, you should pay attention to this, right? Today, this user is exhibiting risky behavior. And today, these 5 partners are perfectly all automated, connected, right? They've all been federated. They just need your approval to make sure that that's the right business decision. That's, I believe, where we're going in the next 3 to 5 years. What do you guys think? Load of crap?
Go on, Colette. And if anyone's got any questions, by the way, feel free to stick them in the chat. There is a chat. You can stick questions in. Anyone fancy sticking a question in for us?
Yeah, we're open to all heckling. And otherwise, this will turn into a typical women in identity board meeting.
No,
Which are very dark.
I think I've seen a lot more from the commercial side of things, or actually feature side of things, like identity verification digitally. Like instead of having a physical passport or a physical ID card when you're creating a new bank account, you have your digital one, or you can scan your regular passport in and you can verify you are who you say you are. Especially now, I feel like it's been expedited with COVID and everyone having to be remote and no one being able to go anywhere in person right now, or the risk that might happen again, even though we're opening up. It just highlighted such a gap in sort of what we do. How can you apply for a mortgage from your house and verify you are who you say you are, do your background checks without having to go chat with some guy in a branch? That sounds awful, honestly, to me, as the younger generation, the challenger banks and things like that are doing everything on apps. That's what I want. I don't have time to make a phone call. I would like a text message, or whatever. So I do see that kind of you are who you say you are, no matter where you are in the world. You don't have to go in person anywhere, although I do like that as well. But you can just verify that.
I love that Colette threw in there that she's the younger generation. Did you hear that, Pam?
I did.
It's I'm the younger generation.
Sorry, God, one of us is.
Cool. So what do I think? So I think, as Colette was saying, I think we've got the situation with the pandemic, and anybody that's listening to the call that's working in identity, it has been a huge accelerator for digitization of services. I think that's going to have a number of effects. Obviously, we're going to see identity in the next 3 to 5 years certainly going to go into it's just going to become mainstream, that these products, much more mainstream, that these products are being used. So I think there's a couple of things with that. I think, as an industry, we have to think about is, the issues around leaving users behind. And so, I just think there's still people that don't understand some of the things that we just take for granted. It's as kind of mid to very technical people generally in the identity industry. And I think just that whole piece around kind of education and user understanding is really going to have to grow with the level of automation and digitization that's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. And interestingly, I was just earlier on today, I was looking at, there was a grant process, and you can actually see the people that have put in for grant money. And there was somebody that actually applied for some grant money, and the whole thing that they were going to do was go and do education in schools. They wanted some grant money to go and do education in schools around digital identity. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Never seen anything like that before. So, you know, some more of that sort of stuff I think is going to happen. It's just like the education that we're going to see. Right, so we've got a question in the box. So the question is, and it's from Karen, do you think we need to differentiate more between what identity is, what is identity and what is ID? The industry seems to use them interchangeably, but our end users don't necessarily see it that way.
We're seeing that a lot. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think they're gonna morph into one. Like I think they sort of, in my opinion, it would be better rather than having kind of two separate, someone's digital identity and someone's ID. Like those are, I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting the question, but why would you have two? I mean, I just want one Colette to be able to identify myself to do various things, whether I'm at work, whether I'm at home, whatever that is, but just being able to do that as one thing. I know we use it interchangeably, but maybe, I guess the general public might not want that. They want some privacy, but I have nothing to hide at this point, so.
I don't know, I think we're dealing with almost a religious debate here. Right? Yeah. If you ask anyone what identity is, they will tell you they understand it because they understand a version of it that is part of who they are, right? They understand how they relate to identity. And I don't think that goes away. You know, I mean, identity can be identification, as in physical identification, it can be your personal expression, it can be pseudonymity, right? The way that you display different personas to the world. Mm. You know, I think we can come up with clearer representations of digital identity that maybe get closer to personal identity. But I don't think that, you know, identity is cultural and it's personal and we have a business context that it runs in that we all try to improve. But I mean, even just understanding the difference on my team, we have this raging debate about whether credentials and claims are the same thing, right? Like raging debate, you know, is a credential, you know, does a credential mean that it's an authentication hoop you jump through, or is a credential a diploma that hangs on the wall, right? Like we can't even get there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, you know, there's that probably like a monthly debate on Twitter that, you know, ends up, as you said, like a raging debate about what, you know, what identity is. And I think one of the things, you know, when I think about like the world of security tends to be probably, you know, in terms of technical security, a bit more binary. When you get into identity, it's almost like philosophy gets mixed up with security, gets mixed up with, you know, privacy. I mean, you know, even the definition of privacy. And so you've kind of got this big intersection between all of these things. And a lot of it is, you know, some of it is it's a very personal, very kind of philosophical kind of thing. And we're trying to turn that into something that's a digital thing that people, you know, people kind of, and my dad, you know, he's like, he doesn't understand what I'm talking about most of the time, you know? So I think that, you know, that's the bridge that we as the industry, we have to build that bridge. We have to build across the bridge to people, not the other way. You know, we can't just build stuff and expect people to understand it. We have to explain it better in more simple terms. And, you know, it's been possible in other industries. We're just still quite a nascent industry, I think. And one of the challenges we have is, you know, it's evolving at a rate that, you know, we kind of can't keep up ourselves. So trying to explain it into simple terms for people is a challenge. Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to ask another couple of questions just around women and identity now. So I'm going to flip to that, and then I think we're going to do some Q&A at the end as well. Yeah. So how, oh God, this is a great question. How do you manage to juggle your paid employment with running Women in Identity? We're all cackling a lot because it's very, very difficult. What is the hardest thing about being you? So how do you manage to juggle your paid employment with running Women in Identity? Who should we go to first?
I mean, I could go for, I feel like I have the least room to, I have the least, I'm only responsible for myself. Like that's the only person in my life I'm responsible for. So I feel like whilst I find it challenging, like I imagine both of you have like exponentially more challenges than I do with it. I just think, I have really great bosses who are like, we don't care how much, if you do your number, we don't actually care like how much you do. And they're always enabling me to like, oh, you need to go to, well, when we went to conferences, go to a conference in Germany that's not a part of your patch, just go. It's good for you. It's good for, Ping. It's good for us to learn what's going on out there. Do it. So I think like that's part of how I can balance, but mostly like I've had to learn to say no to other things that I maybe have wanted to do because this is something that I'm truly passionate about. There was like a moment in time where you like move abroad and you're like, I'm going to start a travel blog, which like everyone does. And I had like a minute where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have to choose. And I obviously chose Women in Identity, and that's, I would make that same choice again because it's been such a rewarding thing, but you have to prioritize and you have to choose. And so like, if it's work and Women in Identity and like maybe like a little bit of piano on the side, like that's it for me. And then
it is a good job you chose Women in Identity, because a travel blog right now would be utterly useless.
It would be a bit of a struggle. Also, I
have been traveling to my bathroom.
I'm a terrible writer.
To my kitchen.
I'm a terrible writer. I can plan things. I could plan a good trip, but I'm talking about it. It's just I ramble like I am now. So okay. Yes, obviously the right choice was made for multiple reasons. One of being COVID.
Okay. So I'm going to go to Pam, and then there's a really good question in the chat. So I'm going to ask that question as well. So go on, Pam. How do you juggle?
Colette, I don't know if you've seen Colette's adventures with her spice rack, but it's...
Oh, yeah, I did see that actually.
Following Colette on Instagram is freaking awesome, I will just say. Wait, I forgot the question. What was the question?
The question is, how do you get a balance between
there's no such thing as balance, right? This whole idea of work-life balance is a fraud. It's a total conspiracy. Like, we want to talk about conspiracies. That is the conspiracy. Every single human being has 24 hours in the day, and they get to choose how those 24 hours go, right? Choice. And that's it. You sleep, you eat, you work, and you carve out time for yourself. And in this case, the Women in Identity stuff is important, and sometimes it takes a back burner when it shouldn't, because I would love to be able to do my job in 8 hours. I would love to do it. If I could work 40 hours a week and meet not the work expectations, but my expectations of what I have to deliver. It's the same with you, Colette. You have those amazing supportive bosses. My boss is very supportive too. But the real taskmaster is not, as professionals, I think for a lot of us, it's not our bosses, it's our idea of how we can be everything we want to be.
Yeah.
And so,
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is thinking that I do think it is a bit of a fallacy. People kind of like, particularly as women, you're sold this kind of dream of like, you can do everything, and I've got a 4-year-old son, as well as a full-time job, as well as Women in Identity, and people kind of go to me, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, I don't really sleep that much. There isn't any magic, I wish there was, I'd love to go, there's a real magical thing here, but, I have to prioritize the stuff that I really, really am passionate about. And, you know, to both of your points, women in identity is something that, you know, super passionate about. So you just have to make it happen, and try and be in a good mood the whole time, which doesn't necessarily.
I mean, this is juggling in the way that, you know, juggling flaming swords is juggling.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I wake up every morning knowing I've disappointed a huge number of people, and I just have to choose which of those disappointed people I want to try to cease disappointing today.
We're not selling this, are we? We're not selling it. We're not selling it. We do need more volunteers though. So, you know, if anybody wants to.
I think the big thing for us is having the support, whether it's of a boss or of a partner or of our volunteers. Like, none of this could be done without other people supporting us. Like, the have it all situation is not realistic, but having a little bit of something while other people share, like that's the only way we could do it realistically, right? Like, that is it.
Cool. Right. So I've got, let's do a couple of kind of quickish questions if we can, because then we want to open to the floor. So we've got a question in the chat box. So it says, what do you think is going to take to move the dial on improving representation for women / minority groups in identity tech?
Well, I think it's the long game, right? Like, it's not gonna happen overnight. We need to start at like universities, like you just said that Grant was doing. I think we need to start lower. Like, I didn't know anything about identity, like leaving uni. I just knew I wanted to be in software. That's it. That's all I knew. And so I think starting at the ground and getting more word out there is one way to do it. I think also going beyond, like, it's so easy for like the UK and the US to become the center of the universe in identity, and like there's so many countries out there that aren't represented, so we need to make sure that, like, especially developing countries are have a seat at the table, right? Because how are we going to change that? So I think it's about education and about, you know, like what we're here for, representation, and yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Emma.
So I think I was going to say, I mean, just in the you know, the positions that I've been in when I've been trying to hire people in, I think, you know, into roles, I think it's about being, one of the challenges when you're hiring is, you know, you often get to a point where you're like, this is so urgent, I need to hire somebody into this role. And sometimes that, you know, that kind of like that push, you get the CVs through and you kind of go, right, okay, well, there's not like a diverse representation here. I think one of the things that I've found is I've just tried to wait. I've waited and sometimes just pushed, you know, to keep on advertising until I've got, you know, a much broader range of CVs in, because I think we need to, you know, and, you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday who's actually a female CEO in the industry. And she was saying, you know, what she's done, because she was hiring 6 engineers in, and she said, what I've done is, and she's made 2 of those women, she's hired 2 women in, and she said, I've actually taken people who, you know, their technical skills weren't necessarily what they were looking for, but she goes, I've just given them the chance. And I think what we were saying earlier on about giving people a chance, you know, when we get into roles where we have the ability to be able to hire people in, we have to give people a leg up. We have to give people a chance, because that's how we progressed. So I think there's that. I mean, the work that we're doing around, you know, women identities doing about putting it on the agenda of the industry to say this actually is going to mean that we build better products, that we have more diverse representation, having, you know, diversity and inclusion policies within organizations. And again, I see that's one of the things that women in identity can do for the industry, is talk about the importance of having diversity and inclusion policies and procedures and making them work for the organization. And I think, you know, to your point, Colette, making jobs seem accessible, you know, and doing the education that the roles are out there. So I don't know if you've got anything, Pam, that you want to add to that.
I think everything you just said, but the other piece that I'm, for whatever reason, super passionate about right now is this idea that you can't hire the people you don't know, right? Or it's much harder to hire someone who you don't know. And so I really feel like every one of us, as people who are sort of aware of the problem, but also as people who know other underrepresented people, right, of all kinds, we need that knowledge to spread. To me, the way that we can act now, all of the pipeline stuff is important, and everything is important, but we have this one small opportunity right now to make sure our name is known widely, but also to help others get their names out, right? Yeah. So that second that a hiring manager who is out there and has the perfect role can look at you and say, what's that perfect role? You should know who the top 10 people are in your field, if you can, so that you can give them thoughtful ideas that widen the field for us all, right? And I don't know how we do that except talking to each other, meeting each other, and knowing each other's skills and where we want to go in our lives. So that's part of why I'm excited about having conversations with you all.
Yeah, I'm building that network. My dog is just about to come in, so hopefully he won't come in. He might do. This is Zoom life, isn't it? So have we got any more questions in the chat? Anyone else want to ask a question? If not, I've got some more here that I'm going to ask. No? Any more questions? Right, so I've got, I'm going to have one more question, I think. Where do you, where do you think women in identity is still going to be needed in 5 years' time? Colette.
I mean, yeah, it could change. Progress is slow, but you look back and see how far up the mountain you've climbed. And I think potentially, things might change for women in identity over the next 5 years. Honestly, making it to 5 years would be such an amazing thing that I don't think any of us thought would be a thing, right? When this started, I think it's about evolving with the needs of the world and the needs of the industry. I think we've done that pretty well with what's gone on this year and what's been asked of us from our members and from the kind of general industry. We're constantly trying to make changes, I think. But I do think in 5 years, it'll be needed in some capacity or the other. Once you solve one problem, which will a problem ever actually fully be solved? Maybe not. But once you solve one problem, there's always another one that I think we're all going to find some sort of passion in and that we want to help solve. There's something to be said about strength in numbers, right? And so where are the numbers? That's what we're doing, right? So I do think we'll be needed in 5 years.
What do you think, Pam?
I know what I hope, and this is partly as part of the IT department, Women in Identity, but what I would like to see is women in identity being incredibly strong as a local, in every local area. I'm so inspired by and impressed by our ambassadors who are trying to grow real communities of real people who really know each other. I feel like that is the absolute best way for us, if we have women meeting each other locally and then cross-pollinating with other local groups, then all of a sudden, we can start hiring, we can hire across countries. We can, we can open up opportunities for people for speaking who maybe never could get their name out before. So that's what I'm hoping in 5 years, is just have those chapters just kicking butt. And then I think the other piece is that if we do it well, and if we prove a lot of value, I think we can start doing, more global projects, right? Trying to take on real tasks to try to improve the identity industry as a group, because we have the funding to put our community behind it. So that would be my answer.
Yeah.
And what do I think? Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think it's still going to be needed in 5 years' time. I think I would really hope we've made some progress. But I think the network that the organisation is becoming, 1,300 members. I think, if we think about that growth in 1 year, we could be 2,500 members by this time next year. So, you know, it's obviously the growth is going to be exponential, but in terms of like, you know, doubling every year, but the industry, the amount of people that are starting to work in the industry and the amount that identity is needed, I just think we're going to grow. I don't think that this is going to go away. And I think we have to, you know, I think it's really easy for people to forget as well. So I think we have to continually, keep on putting it on the agenda of the industry that having diverse representation is important, right? So, you know, because it's very easy to kind of go back to the status quo. Cool, right, so we've got 5 minutes left. One last question or no? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we could do that.
Yeah, one last question. Right, okay, so.
Can I ask, so I don't know if everyone can get into the chat to ask questions. So some people I think have to use the Q&A section, right? So let's just make sure.
There were no questions in the Q&A. No, we're all right.
Yeah, I don't think there are any questions in the Q&A that I can see.
I mean, if there are no questions in here, but I want to make sure people get an opportunity to fill out and, you know, feel free to put zingers in there if you want to.
Cool. So let's have a look. So one really last question. Oh, how do you feel about diversity quotas? I'm glad I saved like a really difficult question for last.
I mean, it is really difficult, right? Like, I think it's such a like chicken or the egg situation. Like, if there were more people in the industry, like a more diverse people in the industry, we need the quotas and vice versa? Like I think there is a want by most organizations to have more diverse teams. I would hope so in 2020. And I would think so, especially given what's gone on this year. And they're probably, you know, I kind of feel like quotas set habits. You know what I mean? Like, is there a short-term period where you set those quotas and then after a while it just becomes practice? It's the same with like training or dieting or whatever. You have to set up parameters in order to learn a new skill. So if we can set up at least targets, and maybe not quotas, because as a salesperson, like quotas are like a fearful word. Like targets are ambitions for organizations, and then helping them. Like we as an organization, I think have ambition to help other organizations find that diverse talent, because it's not for a lack of wanting. It's just, it's hard, right? We realize it's a hard challenge and we want to be there to help. So I think maybe setting targets and you know, things that you want to do, maybe not, you know, like how do you form habits?
I mean, there is, I mean, I guess there is evidence there. So if you look at places like Sweden, they did set quotas. And so my husband used to work for a Swedish company for 10 years. And some of the stuff that I talk about in terms of like, and it was just a gender quota, right? So just around gender. But I would come home and go, you know, this type of thing, you know, this happened to me today, and it would be some kind of sexism that I would have come across in my daily work. And he would just look at me blankly and go, that just never happens in our company.
Right? Like,
it was like he just couldn't comprehend it happening. It's almost like he didn't think it existed. So we did have a conversation around that, but as you can imagine, but I am actually quite a big fan of quotas, because I have seen somebody working in a Swedish company and I've seen what it's done for gender diversity in Sweden. So I'm a fan.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we've got a couple of minutes left. I don't know if we've got, Pam, if you've got any thoughts. I think we've got one last slide as we wrap up. So I just want to thank everybody for their time. I'm really sorry that we started late. We had a few technical difficulties, but I think we hopefully pulled it out the bag. If anybody has got any questions for any of us at all on the Women in Identity leadership team, you can either email us, it's just our first name @womeninidentity.org. You can also follow us on social media. So we've got all the hashtags there, Women in Identity hashtags, that if you're on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I just want to thank everybody for their time. And if you've got the newsletter, please answer the survey. It's really, really helpful for us as an organization, you know, that we get all of our members' feedback into the type of organization that they want us to be. And we just want to say a big thank you to our sponsors as well. So we've got all of our sponsors, and there's going to be a feedback survey that will come back after this session.
We love a survey. We love a survey.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.